Trade rumors involving the San Francisco Giants are intensifying. This one is absolutely wild. With how poor the Giants have played this season, this trade deadline is shaping up to be one of the more interesting ones of recent memory. We'll break down the latest mock trade from an MLB insider here on SF Giants Digest. If it's your first time here, I am your host, Michael Monreal. Welcome to the channel. And if it's not your first time, welcome back to SF Giants Digest. Now, before we get into today's video, if you haven't subscribed yet, go down below, hit that subscribe button. About 75% of you guys who watch the videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. It's completely free and helps the channel continue to bring the best Giants content on YouTube. So that would be much appreciated. Now look, if someone out there is guaranteeing you wins or saying they win 80% of their bets, run. In most places, you pay one handicapper, and if you lose both your bet and their fee. Other sites give you multiple handicappers, which is great, but you're paying separate fees for each one, and it gets expensive fast. That's exactly why we use Otis Edge Analytics, where passion meets data. For one single price, you get access to 5 different expert analysts every day, and access to Otis Edge University, where they teach you bankroll management, betting strategy, and even emotional discipline. That's what makes Otis Edge different. Download their free app right now and get their free pick of the day every day. Yes, free picks every day. The link is in the description and pinned comment. Now that is the Otis Edge. Now getting right into today's video. Of course, as I mentioned in the intro, the Giants are not going to be buying at the deadline. I think that's pretty clear at this point. Now, of course, there's still a month, and maybe they go on a 2-week run of playing good baseball. But even then, I do not think it's worth it to invest more into this team, especially when this is the first time in a long time that this farm system has a lot of upside. Yes, it might be a lot in the lower minors, but for the first time in years, there is some real talent within the system that could come up and become above average big leaguers. You know, between the shortstops in there, Bo Davidson, some really strong talent in the farm system. And I think right now, Buster Posey has to go all in on building for the future and building around the career of Bryce Eldridge. Now, today, Buster Olney, obviously one of the biggest MLB insiders in the country, he works for ESPN as one of their insiders, he put together a rather interesting trade package. He said, pure speculation, but worth exploring for the Mets and the Giants. A deal involving Willy Adames and Marcus Semien. The Giants would have to eat a good chunk of money in Adames' deal to make it happen, but Adames could play third, Bichette could move to second, and Semien would return to the Bay Area. SFS signaled a willingness to listen to offers for Adames, Chapman, and Devers. Now, this is very interesting. Obviously not one of the deals that I would have expected whatsoever going into this year's trade deadline, even the trade deadline rumors. But the first thing that, comes to me is obviously the Giants were number 2 behind, I believe, the Blue Jays a few years ago in the Marcus Semien free agent sweepstakes. He wanted to return to the Bay Area. He wanted to play for the Giants, but the Giants would not cough up the money. So that is obviously just a fun wrinkle in this conversation. So I would assume that Marcus Semien would be welcome to the deal. But Willy Adames going to the Mets is an interesting one. Now, the Mets are in a similar boat as the Giants. They had higher expectations of the Giants, and they haven't been quite as bad. But they have still significantly underperformed what a lot of people expected them to do in the 2026 campaign. And this is basically just a swap of bad contracts. And even if the Giants have to eat money here, they're getting out of the Willy Adames deal a few years earlier than they would be paying it down, especially some of the regression signs that he's already showing. Now, getting into the specific deals, starting with Willy Adames, he is making $31 million a year starting next year through the 2031 season. So they'd be paying him $31 million in his age 35 season before he hits the open market. And this is the one deal that the Giants, in my opinion, should really try to get out of. I think it's going to hurt them more than the Chapman deal, the Devers deal, even though Devers and Eldridge are, Devers is supposedly blocking Eldridge. You can still find a way to split time between DH and first base. But this is the deal that could really hurt them, as this is your shortstop that is going to have to move off of shortstop and is not hitting already and is not defending, and you're going to be paying him $30 million plus a year starting next year for 5 seasons. So at the time, I pointed this out on Twitter yesterday. At the time, this deal made all the sense in the world. But right now, this is looking like something that could hurt the Giants over the next few years. And it makes sense why, we're trying to find a way to mock a deal that the Giants could get out of this deal a little sooner. Now, on Marcus Semien's side, he's currently making $26 million a year. He'll make that next year. And then 2028 in his age 37-year season, he will make $20 million, and then he is a free agent. So if the Giants bring him in, he'll make, maybe $10 million the rest of the season, and then 26 next year and 20 the next year, and you're only paying him through 2028. So obviously you'd be out of this deal significantly sooner than you would be out of the Adames deal, and you're paying him less money than you would be paying Adames over the next 2 years. So on that side, it does make a lot of sense, but on the other, it's a pretty interesting swap. I don't understand why the Giants have to eat a ton of money, because you're still bringing in 2 years of $46 million for a guy who is not hitting whatsoever. He's been worse than Adames at the plate this year and is actually having the worst defensive season he's had in a very long time. Now, getting into some of the numbers between these players, obviously the contracts are really the most important things here, because you're trying to get rid of 2 bad contracts on both sides. But Adames this year has obviously just not performed up to expectations. A guy who signed the biggest deal in franchise history by a free agent a few years ago has just not performed like it so far in 2026. Now, he could totally turn things around starting today and become the hitter we saw for the last 4 months of 2025, but so far it has not been there. He's slashing 223, 266, 420, good for an 89 WRC plus. He has hit 13 home runs, which is a pretty solid number, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get to 30 again, but everything else outside of the power output has been pretty abysmal. He's striking out 27% of the time. He's not walking very much. That's dropped 6% since last year. So just overall, it's been a very underwhelming offensive showcase for Willy Adames in 2026. And it makes sense why Giants, people in the front office, executives are starting to worry about this deal, because you're paying this guy $31 million a year starting next year, and he's already showing these signs of regression. Not very encouraging for, at once the biggest free agent, the guy making the most money in the history of the San Francisco Giants. Now, on Marcus Semien's side, he's a guy who has been around for a very, very long time. The year that sticks out was that first year in Toronto, or that only year in Toronto, I should say, when he hit 45 home runs. He had a 131 WRC plus. He was in the MVP race that year, and every single year he's been pretty above average from 2019 to 2024. He was a very solid hitter. Last year we started to see the signs of regression, where he had an 89 WRC plus in 534 plate appearances. This year it's been even worse, a 77 WRC plus in 306 plate appearances so far. He has hit 9 home runs, which is not necessarily encouraging, but he's on pace to pass the 15 he hit last year, I believe, and he's currently slashing 219, 275, 351. Obviously, the on-base percentage starting with a 2 is not super encouraging, and none of these numbers overall are very encouraging. But the biggest thing about these deals, I'll say it again, is that you would be paying this guy significantly less years and significantly less money over the next 2 years than you would be a guy like Willy Adames, who's under contract until 2031. So I just wanted to point out those offensive numbers. And the one thing I just wanted to shout out really, really quickly is on defense, these guys have both looked like a shell of themselves, for being completely honest. Willy Adames this year has not been good. -1 defensive runs saved, -13 outs above average. That is by far the worst outs above average he's posted in his career. Early in his career, he was negative, pretty a lot of the time he was in the negatives, but between 2022 and 2025 he did grade out as a positive guy in outs above average, which is basically your range at your position, but -10 fielding run value. That is by far the worst of his career as well, and we saw this in the first 2 months of the 2025 season, where he was not a very good defender at short. He turned things around. So far in 2026, it is a lot more of the negative side of his defense at shortstop, so that is going to be something else to monitor, whether the Giants are going to be okay with his defense being this poor for another 2 to 3 years if they don't end up trading him, because it's pretty clear that a move to second base is imminent with Willy Adames. Now, Marcus Semien, his defense has been pretty reliable. He's a guy who credits Ron Washington, of all people, of the Giants dugout, of course, for turning his defense around. He was never a bad defender by any means early in his career, but just not a great defender. But since then, since playing with Ron Washington in Oakland, he has been very, very solid. You see, outs above average, fielding run value, defensive run saved, they are all positive since 2021, playing at second base, which is, of course, where he would play with the Giants. He played shortstop with the A's. He's moved around the infield a little bit, but this is the first year where he's been negative in basically everything. -6 defensive run save, -2 outs above average, -3 fielding run value. So it's clear that the range has gone a little bit. He's not making all of the big plays he used to. So both of these guys are aging defenders, but of course the bats is the biggest thing here, because second base defense is not the biggest thing in the world. We've seen Luis Reyes turn things around. It's been fun to watch him play defense, but if you're employing a guy with -2 outs above average at second base, it's not the worst thing in the world. Now, before we get out of here, make sure to go down below, leave a comment, your thoughts on this deal. I think there's a lot of different avenues you could talk about it. Yes, you'd be, getting out of that Willy Adames contract and that money, but you'll also be paying $46 million over the next 2 years for Marcus Semien, a guy who is not hitting whatsoever with the Mets right now and is defending at the worst clip of his career. Make sure to leave a comment down below your thoughts on this deal. And as always, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. And as always, thank you so much for watching.